shall we? Let's check it out. Okay, welcome into Rob Schmitt Tonight. I'm Bob Brooks. Rob has the night off. So, Acting Attorney General Todd Blanche had his confirmation hearing in front of the Senate Judiciary Committee on Capitol Hill today. In case you didn't know, and what do you think happened? Well, if you guessed that Democrats took the opportunity to try and smear Blanche and the Trump administration, then you would have guessed right. You know, I always wonder what the public thinks of these hearings, why you would even tune in to watch it, unless you are purely there for the theatrics, because you barely learn anything about the topic at hand. You know, for the most part, it turns to Democrats trying to play gotcha with the Trump administration pick. And that's pretty much it. And that's how it went. Here is how a line of questioning was started by the senator from Rhode Island, Sheldon Whitehouse. Take a listen.
How long do you intend to put up with that Kash Patel character?
Oh, that Kash Patel character. You know, what kind of question even is that? You mean Kash Patel, the director of the FBI? The director of the FBI that was highlighted by President Trump today, that the FBI and DOJ have given us this in our country. Murder is down to the lowest level since 1900. And we just saw the biggest one-year drop in recorded history. Violent crime arrests, they are up 100%. Robberies, carjackings, and assaults are all crashing. More than 500 million deadly doses of drugs have already been seized. So you mean that, Kash Patel? Along with the DOJ under Todd Blanche, their leadership? You know what, guys? I think that sounds pretty good, actually. Like, you know, I like when murder levels are down to a 126-year low. Anyways, he went into another line of questioning, and here that is.
Are you good with his airplane jaunts? Are you confident he's not drinking on the job? Are you sure none of his travel is a pretext for vacation activities like snorkeling, Olympics, and visiting girlfriends? Are you sure he knows what he's doing? Do you vouch for him? Are you willing to look at whether he lied to this committee?
That's an extraordinarily obnoxious question, Senator.
Yeah, and I agree. That is extremely obnoxious. The whole demeanor is, God, yeah, what did anyone learn from that? Like I said, nothing. Except that Senator Whitehouse is extremely obnoxious. And we're also got some hard-hitting questions like from Adam Schiff, right? You know him.
What happened to you, Todd Blanche? I'll tell you this. I think Robert Caro had it right when he said that power doesn't corrupt as much as it reveals. I suspect it has just revealed who you are. And who you are is someone willing to sacrifice everything you once believed in.
Oh, gosh, dude. Kudos to Todd Blanche for staying composed with something being said like that by, of all people, Adam Schiff. Truly, that was hard to watch. The whole thing basically was, here's another.
Since you became a legal adult, have you ever made unwanted requests for sexual favors or committed any verbal or physical harassment or assault of a sexual nature?
No, Senator.
Have you ever faced discipline or entered into a settlement relating to this kind of conduct?
No, Senator.
Like I said, it's ridiculous. Look, when it comes to Adam Schiff, in case you forgot, he served as the lead House manager and chief prosecutor during the first Senate impeachment trial of President Trump. You want to talk about craving power? Because that's what he was accusing Todd Blanche of. That's it right there. All Todd Blanche has done is stepped up and defend a former president and then leading candidate, to become president again in Donald Trump, while Biden and company unleashed the DOJ on him and everything they got. And now he has been picked to lead that same DOJ because the president can't trust him. Do you know what he's done since he's become acting AG? Well, let's look at some of that.
Violent crime arrests are up nearly 114%. We've taken almost 5,000 child predators and human traffickers off the streets. And the Department of Justice has filed nearly 100,000 indictments and informations since January 20th, 2025.
You know what else they've done? They've also taken care of the families of our fallen police officers.
In just the last 4 weeks, in just the last month, we've paid $96 million in claims through the Public Safety Officers Benefits Program to eligible surviving families of fallen public safety officers, even while fewer law enforcement officers were killed in the line of duty than the prior years.
I applaud that. That is just a small part of it. I don't have time to list everything our entire Justice Department has done, but there has been a ton of work to make America safe again. That is the #1 priority of the DOJ. And I'll tell you what else he's done. He's gotten rid of a lot of prosecutors that were involved with that same weaponized Biden DOJ.
In recent years, we watched the Justice Department turned against many of you and a former president, and it damaged the public's faith in justice. We are fixing that.
Thank God they are. What has happened to the DOJ still is one of the biggest issues for a large portion of Americans that has not gone away. I know it is. And Senator Eric Schmitt, he also talked about that today.
I heard one of my colleagues say that this is the most troubled Department of Justice in history. I happen to live through the previous administration, where you had a Department of Justice completely weaponized against political opponents. They tried to throw their chief political opponent in jail, ruin his family's lives.
I've had so many people tell me if what happened to President Trump isn't somehow fixed, rectified, or prevented from happening again, then look, we really basically don't even have a country. At that point, we are Venezuela before Maduro was removed. And it just so happens today that one of those people who played a very major role in that has made some headlines. That is former special prosecutor Jack Smith. Senator Chuck Grassley put out this press release late last night. It says this: Special Counsel Jack Smith's investigative team obtained and reviewed text messages from 44 members of Congress as part of the Biden Department of Justice's criminal investigation into President Trump. Evidence shows the investigators bypassed a required filter team review process, violating investigative protocols and potentially infringing on constitutional guardrails. It was completely out of control. I wonder what'll happen there. I hope something. I mean, if they can go after the former president and leading GOP candidate for president, look, they can go after anyone. They have made their point. No one is safe. But just to put this into perspective, here's how Senator Rick Scott from Florida reacted, because he was part of it.
When does this end? If they can do it to me, when I ran a big company, if they can do it to me as a U.S. senator, nobody's safe. Any American, they're not safe. They want to come after you, they're going to come after you.
Yeah, if the DOJ operates like that, no one is. None of the Democrats seem to be concerned about that when talking about the state of the DOJ today. What Senator Dick Durbin seemed angry about, that was the fact that Todd Blanche defended and stood by President Trump through all of that.
This nation deserves an attorney general who loves the Constitution more than any single president. An attorney general focused on keeping America safe and combating corruption, not satisfying the president's personal grievances.
Funny enough, I just showed you that Todd Blanche is doing exactly that. He's keeping the country safe, record numbers with low crime, and he's also weeding out corruption. Dick Durbin should actually be thrilled. And on top of that, there is this. Presidents put AGs in place that they know will have their backs. You need proof of that? Well, I'll give you a big one right now. How about this?
They appoint their qualified friends, don't they?
Yes.
I mean, one president appointed his brother, right?
He did, Senator.
Yeah, that was JFK appointing his brother, Robert Kennedy, as Attorney General, because he could trust him. Like I said at the beginning of these hearings, for the most part, nothing more than theatrics. Let's talk about it. The Louisiana Attorney General Liz Murrill and Alabama Attorney General Steve Marshall join us now. I appreciate you both coming on. Attorney General Murrill, I'll start with you. Just your thoughts on how today went, and what do you think is going to happen now with our potentially new AG Todd Blanche here?
Well, I'm really excited about Todd's nomination. I think he's going to make a great attorney general. I know him personally. We've worked together on a number of things in the last couple of years and spent time recently with him addressing some of the fraud initiatives that the DOJ and our states are working on together. So I know he's going to do a great job. These hearings are just, the Democrats use them for political theater, and I think he did a fantastic job deflecting what were really garbage questions to begin with. They weren't questions, they were just, political theater, so.
Totally agree. I think he kept his cool very well, and I don't know how he did it because I wouldn't have reacted the same way. Attorney General Marshall, we know he's going to need votes, right? Most Republicans, almost all of them. Tom Tillis, he's maybe one of the big ones. Earlier, he called out the hypocrisy from Democrats in going after Blanche and how they've all turned a blind eye to the weaponization of the Biden DOJ against President Trump and the pro-lifers and January 6ers. Here, I want to play another clip.
I've heard some of the Democrats talking about this administration. It's almost as if they weren't here when the Biden administration did the indictments against President Trump. It's remarkable that these people sat before this committee when all that was going on and not a whiff. I hate duplicity and I hate situational ethics. It's just jarring to hear people criticize this administration when they can't look in the mirror and ask themselves why they weren't criticizing an administration when they happen to have a blue jersey.
So, Attorney General Marshall, let's talk about what Todd Blanche needs to continue to do to weed out some of that corruption that we saw and how you think he did today as well.
And remarkable performance today. And look, Senator Tillis ought to be able to declare very quickly that he is supporting Todd Blanche with his vote in confirmation. But look, I don't have to guess what Todd Blanche is going to be like as Attorney General. I've seen it. And the people of Alabama have seen it as well as others around the country. You've highlighted some of those remarkable success stories that when federal and state partners come together, we've seen that historic reduction in murder rates and violent crime. We've taken off hundreds of thousands of pounds of fentanyl across our borders, saving lives. And we've seen a partnership that has not existed for quite some time with federal and state partners in being able to allow for what people in my community want, and that's safe homes, safe streets to be able to raise their families. Trump administration is delivering, and Todd's one of those reasons why.
Attorney General Murrill, let's talk about Jack Smith and those revelations from Senator Grassley here. Where does this go?
Look, I think Todd's going to get confirmed. And he's going to do a great job. I think the Democrats are going to continue to try and attack him. It was gratifying to see Tom Tillis and Senator Schmitt pointing out the hypocrisy of these people who are ignoring what happened during the Biden administration. Nobody weaponized the Department of Justice more than the Biden administration under the supervision of Merrick Garland. It was appalling. And I think today's hearings gave an opportunity for some of the Republicans on the panel to call them out for their hypocrisy. Todd's going to do his job, and he's going to do it well, and he already has been doing it well as the deputy to Pam during her tenure as Attorney General.
Attorney General Marshall, same question to you. How do you hold him accountable? What happens next in this potential investigation? Lay this out. Jack Smith.
I think you unleash federal investigators and prosecutors to be able to look at what's going on. Look, we've already seen from Senator Grassley a rollout of the effort of Jack Smith and others that were doing the Biden administration's work to be able to look at the records of federal officials. Now we know it's gone even farther, violating protocols against not only what the law requires, but the internal policies of the Department of Justice to weaponize that administration to go after their political enemies. Todd Blanche has an obligation now to investigate it and hold those individuals accountable.
I'll tell you what, if someone in the Trump administration was accused of doing what Senator Grassley has released today, it would be the lead story on the nightly news, on every news organization. Right. It is unbelievable. Both Attorneys General, Liz Murrill, Steve Marshall, I appreciate you both coming on. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us.
Okay, Johnny Eastman, Trump's former lawyer and target of the Jack Smith investigation himself, joins us now. Let's talk about it. What happens next, do you think? Let's stay on the Jack Smith topic here. I think a lot of Americans want accountability. Senator Grassley laid out pretty much a bombshell report on him. Talk about that, and what do you think, where this goes?
Well, I mean, this is why the Democrats are going after Todd Blanche so hard. I mean, they claim it was weaponization of the Department of Justice with Trump going after, retaliating against these enemies. But what he's doing is holding accountable those that engaged in the biggest lawfare operation we've ever seen in this country. Jack Smith was, the point of the spear on that whole effort. And as the documents are now coming out, getting declassified, but coming out even further, I think we see in what, in my view, is a grand conspiracy to deprive not only the president, but a lot of his top supporters, his counsel, his electors, of their constitutional rights. That's a federal crime, and I think on under Todd Blanche as Attorney General, those things are going to be prosecuted. I think the Democrats know that. I think they know he's got the receipts now. Chuck Grassley producing some of them. And that's why they're trying to discredit him on the front end, because accountability is coming to the folks that engaged in the lawfare that so many people, including myself, have been victim to over the last 5 years.
Yeah, John, and some people, they're going to make the argument that, this is just retaliation. That's not what this is. This is about correcting a major wrong in a DOJ that was allegedly doing some very corrupt things. That has to be dealt with, don't you think?
Well, I do. People keep asking me, why do I keep focusing on what's happened? I said, if we don't put a stop to this and hold people accountable for what was done, then they'll do it again the next time they're in power. And they will destroy the country, they'll destroy the justice system. People have got to be held accountable. And holding them accountable for crimes that were committed is not retaliation. It's not tit-for-tat retaliation. Well, you did weaponized, so we're going to do weaponized. It's holding people accountable for what they did, crossing a lot of lines that had never been crossed in our nation's history before. And some of these people need to be in orange jumpsuits if we're going to put a stop to it. And what Senator Grassley's been doing for the last couple of years, what Todd Blanche and his crew, both first at the Weaponization Task Force and now with some of the special prosecutors that have been appointed to look at this, they have got the receipts and they are putting together the rock-solid case. I think we're going to see indictments in pretty short order. And that's why the Democrats are going after Todd so hard in these confirmation hearings. Just watching them, complain about the weaponization fund that was part of the original settlement. Some senators who had slipped in the middle of the night a fund for them to get compensated for the same type of thing. Just the double speak that coming out of these guys is just, you couldn't sell this script to Hollywood. It's just so outrageous. And yet here we are watching it live.
John, I tell you what, I could not agree anymore with everything you just said right there. And I know so many Americans across the country feel the way you do, including about that weaponization fund as well. John Eastman, we got to leave it there. I appreciate you. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Take care.
Okay, President Trump orders ICE to reverse course and resume vehicle stops while apprehending illegals, calling Markwayne Mullins' initial move to stop them playing right into the criminals' hands. So we got to ask, right? Is the secretary already in the hot seat? We're going to dive into the details next with Congressman Andy Ogles. Just a minute. Stick with us.
A Social Security update. Millions collect Social Security, but 70% of Americans don't get their full benefits. Now, a new report shows how to boost your Social Security by as much as $188,000. Author Matthew Allen reveals 5 key strategies in a new report. Newsmax calls it the best guide for retirees. Everyone needs this free Social Security report. Act today to get your full benefits.
Hi there, I'm Dean Heskin, President and CEO of Swiss America. Most investors believe their IRA, 401k, and bank accounts are reliable and safe. But what if our economy becomes so dire that you're restricted from accessing your own money? The fact is that should your bank be in trouble for holding bad loans, the burden could fall on you to help bail them out. Even more concerning is that U.S. financial regulations allow banks to impose withdrawal limits on your hard-earned savings. But there's something you can do about it. Our team at Swiss America has a report called The Secret War on Cash. Learn how to protect yourself with assets that can remain outside the control of banks and other financial institutions. For over 40 years, Swiss America has been one of the most trusted metal firms in the country. So don't wait. Call or text the number on your screen today for financial peace of mind in these uncertain times.
For years, I was hiding my drinking. I'm the type of drinker that I don't just have one. I didn't want to feel that urge anymore. That's what brought me to War Health. I'm a better dad. I'm a better husband. I just have a more grounded and present life, thanks to War Health.
Text Newsmax to 710-710 to learn more.
My dad has never been in better shape. He had a stroke and passed away. He had a life insurance policy. Ethos.com. In 10 minutes, you can be covered with life insurance.
Check your price today at ethos.com.
Okay, welcome back in. How in the world they came to this decision, lost on me. But after outrage from the MAGA base over ICE's plan to halt vehicle stops while tracking down illegal aliens who have a warrant out for them following the fatal shootings of 2 illegals who resisted arrest with their cars, President Trump ordered the agency to quickly reverse course. Posting on Truth Social earlier, the men and women of ICE are doing a great job, one that has to be done. We cannot give up one of ICE's most important and effective crime-fighting tools, the traffic stop. Once we do, we are playing right into the criminals' hands. The radical left Democrats would like to see this done, but it won't happen on my watch. ICE, be judicious, fair, and smart, and go back and do your job. Very important job. Keep those record crime stats coming. Remember, you are loved and respected in America. Now, DHS Secretary Markwayne Mullin may be on thin ice with Trump's base after this, writing earlier, our #1 goal is to keep our officers safe and get criminals off our streets. Illegal aliens will be arrested and deported wherever they are. If you are here illegally, leave now. I mean, you got to put this into perspective. You know, if an American citizen flees, they face consequences, a police chase. But for a brief moment, it kind of seemed like illegals, they were going to be free to ride off, maybe. I don't know. Congressman Andy Ogles joins us now to weigh in. Congressman, good to see you. So walk us through what you think the thought process was behind this and then President Trump intervening.
You know, President Trump absolutely made the right decision. As someone who is in law enforcement myself, you know, if you have an incident involving an officer, a crash, a shooting, heaven forbid, you know, there's protocols in place, an examination of that specific event, that specific officer, but you don't shut down the whole department. You don't give criminals a pass. So the president absolutely did the right thing. And not only should he, you know, get, you know, ICE agents back on the street and deporting illegals, I would say turn up the heat and double down and send a message that this one incident isn't going to slow our job, which is to deport the illegal criminals.
Nor should it. Just don't flee. How about comply with the officers that are there? All right, let's get to this. I want to walk everyone through this. One of these guys, his name is Lorenzo Salgado Orejos Van. All right, he's the illegal that fled arrest, allegedly rammed ICE agents with his car in Houston. And I know we just talked about this. Great that President Trump did and corrected. Many are maybe now calling for Markwayne Mullin to explain why. You know, apparently there was a phone call between he and Susan Collins up in Maine after a situation happened up there. What do you think is going to happen with that?
To be determined. You know, I don't know his status. You know, he made a judgment call. The president, at the end of the day, is the chief executive of the country, and he reversed it, just as he should have. And so I think we move on and move past this, and Markwayne will learn from this and continue to do a great job as we double down on deporting these folks that, quite frankly, are terrorizing our communities. Look, if you resist arrest, you're increasing the probability that you're going to get shot. That is just a fact, and I support ICE 110%, and thank you for all that you do serving this country. And if you're an illegal, get the heck out.
So, Congressman, you just mentioned they terrorize our community, which they do. And I also want to point this out tonight, that a 21-year-old UMass Lowell soccer team star goalie, Tobias Toby Forsythe, so he was killed allegedly by a non-English speaking Uzbek driver in a massive semi-truck in Ohio. Now, this is just one of the latest victims of many who have met this end. President Trump has said this about CDLs for non-English speakers. This was earlier today in the Oval Office.
My administration will soon take historic action to get illegal alien truck drivers who are just killing a lot of people. They can't read signs. Many of them are on drugs or alcohol, and they shouldn't be driving these things, and they came in totally illegally, and we don't want them. We're going to replace them with proud American veterans. We're going to say any American who's driven a heavy truck for our military will automatically be eligible for a commercial driver's license.
Correction, Congressman, he was at the War College in Carlisle, Pennsylvania for a summit. But it's a huge problem. These people who can't read, many of them here illegally, getting these CDLs here, this has got to stop.
Yeah, I mean, and the president, again, once again, is correct. You have these individuals, they're trained by our military, they drive heavy equipment. You know, let's check their proficiency, then let's get them on the road, and let's get these illegals off of our streets. They shouldn't be in this country to begin with. They certainly should not be driving, you know, heavy machinery. And quite frankly, you know, the leftists, the bleeding hearts, you know, where are their tears for that young man who his future was taken away from him? His family has been shattered. And where are the leftists? Where are the bleeding hearts? No, they'll stand up for illegals who are killing people. Meanwhile, Americans are paying the price for this type of criminal activity. And again, they shouldn't be on the street. They should not have CDLs. They should not be driving, period.
Totally agree. What about the American citizen? I believe the mother of Sheridan Gorman,
first.
when she testified on Capitol Hill, said the same thing. I don't know why Democrats don't consider American children first. Anyways, let's talk about birthright citizenship. You're going to introduce the Anchors Away Act. Explain what's going on and try and prevent exactly this conversation we're having right now.
Yeah, so when you look at our immigration system, so, I'm working closely with the White House. I have the Assimilation Act, the Remigration Act, but then we also have this other issue. So, yes, we have people here illegally. We've got to fix the immigration system. We've got to start denaturalizing individuals like Mamdani and get them the heck out of this country. But then there's this loophole where you have individuals, Chinese elite, communists, from China. They come to the United States, or say they go to Guam and they have a child. They're there for 2 days and they go back home. That child is raised communist. They're trained to hate America. And there's roughly 1 million Chinese now that have U.S. citizenship who, quite frankly, because of that citizenship, could run for president of the United States. And so this is a simple measure to block women, especially those from China, from coming into our country, having a baby, having that citizenship, and then literally working to undermine this country. Look, China plays the long game. They're here to undermine our country, and this is just another step where we have to be aggressive and defend our Constitution and defend our country.
Well, Congressman, I wish you wouldn't have told everybody that, because now Democrats will go find one of them. If they're a communist, they're going to do it now.
Well, they've got a whole slew of communists in their party already, so that's why they're going down the tubes.
I know. Congressman Andy Ogles, sir, it's a pleasure. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Okay, after the break, new testimony from independent journalists Nick Shirley and James O'Keefe on Capitol Hill about their fraud discoveries. In fact, how about this? James O'Keefe says he dressed up as a homeless person on Skid Row and was offered weed for signatures. And none of the Democrats bothered to show up for said hearing.
Chairman, wouldn't a Democrat go next since the Republican just testified?
If there were a Democrat here, yes.
It's our America. We built it. Courage, freedom. Millions go to Newsmax when they need to know. Start today on the free Newsmax app. Newsmax is real news for real people.
Where's the admission desk at your hospital? You may need it sooner than you think. It's the middle of the night and you, your spouse, or your child is sick, high fever, can't keep anything down, and getting worse. Now you're waiting in the ER, and everyone gets seen before you. And when I finally see you and order prescriptions, you still have to wait for your pharmacy to open and hope they have what I prescribed. This is the medical emergency kit. It's stocked with essential medications, including amoxicillin, generic Z-Pak, and ivermectin. Now you have the right medications when you need them. And it's why I and so many of my colleagues have medical emergency kits. It's like having an urgent care and pharmacy in your home. Just fill out a brief online medical intake and your kit, prescribed by a licensed provider, is shipped to your door. Here's how to order.
Order your kit now and save $45. Visit urgentcarekit.com/news. That's urgentcarekit.com/news.
If you want to be ready for summer, now's the time to call Sono Bello. Sono Bello helped me target the spots that diet and exercise never could.
Sono Bello gave me my bikini body back.
At Sono Bello, our expert surgeons remove stubborn fat permanently and tighten loose skin in one visit with less downtime. Every treatment plan is personalized for your body, your goals, and the results that you want to achieve.
Walking around this summer with my shirt off, it's the best decision I've ever made.
I see my spark back, and I am so glad that I went with Sono Bello because they have truly changed my life.
With over 50,000 five-star reviews, Sono Bello is America's #1 cosmetic surgery specialist.
I love wearing a bikini again and not having to cover up.
See what's possible for you. Schedule your free consultation today.
I got my summer body at Sono Bello. Get your summer body back. Do this for you.
And our flexible payment options make it easy to get started today. Call now or go to sonobello.com for your free personalized consultation. It's your life. Live it beautifully.
Hello, this is Franklin Graham. Samaritan's Purse is responding to the deadly earthquakes that struck Venezuela
On the 24th of June, 2 back-to-back earthquakes. Hundreds and thousands of people have been injured. Thousands of people are missing. The people are hurting. Samaritan's Purse has taken a field hospital. We've got doctors and nurses, and we're responding right now to the people that have lost so much. We've taken water purification. We've taken solar lights, a lot of things. We need your prayers and we need your help. God bless you.
It was supposed to be the perfect gateway. Instead, it became an open door for cyber criminals. But that threat stops right here. Built by Americans for America. Eastman defends our homes, our businesses, and our government. Don't let them compromise your identity. Get our all-in-one solution today. Visit PCMatic.com.
People always ask me how I stay ready. How I lock in when it actually counts. They think I must be on something. It's pure, it's potent. It's all me. Something that never lets me down. Armra. I'm on it.
America's good faith has been abused by others, often foreigners who seek to harm, rob, and cheat America. Through my efforts, I've exposed billions of dollars of fraud and helped save America hundreds of billions for years to come. This issue has nothing to do with political parties. No dollar says Republican or Democrat on it. People often wonder how come this fraud became so big and how come it becomes so rampant? And the reason is because no one actually ever really looked into it.
Well, we are lucky. He got a camera and went up to Minneapolis. That was independent journalist Nick Shirley testifying in front of the Senate on Capitol Hill earlier today about the tens of millions of dollars in fraud, billions discovered across America. The Democrats don't care about stopping fraud. They made that clear today and so many other instances when none of them bothered to show up. You see their chairs, they're empty. Nobody went.
Chairman, wouldn't a Democrat go next since the Republican just testified?
If there were a Democrat here, yes.
So there's no Democrats present at a hearing about fraud?
There doesn't appear to be a great deal of interest across the aisle.
You know, you wonder how that happens, but then you realize they just don't care if your money is being stolen by people who, keyword, vote for them. James O'Keefe was also there. He recently discovered on Skid Row that the homeless were being targeted. He talked about allegations of paying the homeless for their votes.
In February of 2026, I disguised myself as a homeless person and approached a petition circulator on Skid Row. The petition circulator told me, we're going to need 14 signatures and we're going to pay you $2. We recorded a woman named Brown handing over cash as payment in exchange for a homeless person to register to vote in a federal election. Now that is a federal crime. The vote is sacred. It's an act of conscience, of judgment. And when it becomes contaminated by incentives, when it is for sale, it undermines the sanctity and fairness of the process designed to elect those who represent us.
Stealing money, paying the homeless to do their bidding. What will they think of next? Let's talk about it. Tudor Dixon is the host of the Tudor Dixon podcast. She joins us now along with Kristen Robbins. She is a Minnesota Republican state representative. She's also the chair of the Minnesota Fraud Committee. Pleasure to have you both on. Tudor, gonna start with you. I want to talk about James O'Keefe. As you heard him, dressed up as a homeless person on Skid Row. He testified that the petitioner came over and said, go get 14 signatures. I'm going to give you $2. That doesn't seem right to me. Talk about it.
No, but it doesn't surprise any of us. That's the interesting part about that. I mean, look, they won't pass the Save America Act. They won't even show up to this hearing. And just a couple of days ago, Senator Alyssa Slotkin, a senator from the state of Michigan, came out and openly admitted in a speech that if we do pass the Save America Act, the Democrats will never have a majority in Washington again. What do you think that means? They know exactly what they're doing. And I will argue on one of the points that Nick Shirley made. I do believe there is a party connected to this. Over and over, time and time again, we see that it is the Democrat Party that is connected to this. Because as fraud happens with ballots, it's the same thing with money. That money is distributed and the votes come in. It is all about power and it is on their side of the aisle. You know,
100%. Totally agree with you there, Kristen. So we know that Nick Shirley, he's pretty much ended the political career of your governor, Tim Walz, who he either knew or was totally inept, probably a combination of both. And they attacked him so much, Nick Shirley, and it actually looks like, though, Nick Shirley, he was right.
Absolutely.
Governor Tim Walz labeled my work as white supremacy and called me a far-right delusional conspiracy theorist. Meanwhile, he dropped out of re-election, and he even said he has ended his political career. Now, the highest government-funded daycare in Minnesota has pleaded guilty to daycare fraud, and the largest autism bust in American history has been exposed. Where is Tim Walz in the media now?
So, Kristen, if I was in your state, I'd want that money recouped somehow, though I know that's very difficult, and I would want more prosecutions. Talk about the work that's being done.
Absolutely. We're grateful for the work Nick did, and our committee had also been doing it. We produced a list of 72 potentially fraudulent daycares to the Department of Human Services back in February of 2025. The Early Leering Center was #1 on the list, and they didn't do anything. They didn't look into any of the 72 on our list. And through Nick's work and through others, we were able to expose it. But what's interesting is that they continue to say they didn't find fraud there. And the woman who owned it has pled guilty and been convicted. And the department commissioner said in a hearing last spring that they didn't find fraud. They closed voluntarily. So they said they did a site visit. They didn't find anything. So even when they claim they're looking into it, they are turning a blind eye and not finding the fraud. So it's very concerning, but grateful for Nick and everything they're doing. And the voter fraud is real. We had that in Minnesota, 500 to 600 fraudulent voter applications that were again paid, which is now illegal in Minnesota. But we had 2 federal convictions on this last summer. It is happening in real time in our state and other people's states, and people have to pay attention to this. We should not be incentivizing people to pay them to get voter applications.
Well, what you said is so ridiculous, though. The fact that, they said so many times that, oh, nothing to see here. And then they go on to plead guilty. They get caught red-handed. It's unbelievable. State Representative Kristen Robbins, good to see you. Tudor Dixon, you as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, Joe Biden set to release that tell-all book after the midterms. But the question everyone's asking, do we believe that he wrote it? I don't. I don't think anyone is home. That is just my opinion. It is sad. Joe Biden talking about the new book coming up.
Next on Finnerty.
A new way to end so-called birth tourism. Senator Jim Banks reveals his plan to stop illegals from having babies here in America and to stop them from becoming citizens.
Coming up next, only on Newsmax.
For pain in multiple spots like here, here, or here, Salonpas patches stick firmly and remove comfortably once your pain is gone. Salonpas. It's good medicine.
I've been in the fitness industry for more than 25 years, and Fatty 15 is a built-in recovery system for your cells. You can't have a healthy outside if you're not taking care of the inside. Try Fatty 15.
Fanapt allopurinol is approved for adults with bipolar 1 disorder with acute mixed or manic episodes. Unlike some drugs for bipolar 1 disorder, nausea, vomiting, and restlessness are not common with Fanapt. Fanapt may be associated with serious side effects. Elderly patients with dementia-related psychosis treated with antipsychotics are at increased risk of stroke or death. Fanapt is not approved for elderly with dementia-related psychosis. Fanapt prolongs the QT interval and may be associated with abnormal heart rhythm or sudden death. In 5% or more of people in clinical trials, heart rate increases, dizziness, hypotension, weight gain, dry mouth, stuffy nose, sleepiness, and increases in liver enzymes have been observed. These are not all the side effects. Talk to your prescriber and learn more at fanapt.com. By Vanda Pharmaceuticals.
You don't wait for a fire to buy a fire extinguisher, so why wait for Chogi Emergency to get a light back? Chogi Emergencies can handle anyone, anywhere. In fact, it's the first and only FDA-authorized anti-choking device in the country, designed for simplicity in an emergency. Just place, push, and pull. Peace of mind starts before the emergency. Be prepared when it matters most.
Go to lifevac.net or call 877-543-3822.
Every 8 minutes, a claim of sexual assault is filed against rideshare drivers.
But rideshare companies prohibit both drivers and riders from carrying firearms to protect themselves.
Imagine this banana was a less lethal device capable of incapacitating an attacker in a fraction of a second and allowing you to escape.
At Byrna, we don't sell bananas. Go to Byrna.com to find out how you can always be prepared to defend.
This is a paid advertisement for legal services. If you or a loved one has mesothelioma or any other asbestos-related cancer, call now. Asbestos manufacturers sold deadly asbestos materials to thousands of companies, putting workers at risk. An estimated $30 billion in court-ordered trusts have been set aside to pay out claims to asbestos victims. You may be entitled to a portion of these funds and receive compensation without filing a lawsuit or ever going to court. For your free legal consultation, call 1-800-306-1979. That's 1-800-306-1979.
I still love to surf, snowboard, and of course skate. So I take Cunol Magnesium to support my muscle and bone health. Cunol's high absorption magnesium glycinate helps me get the full benefits of magnesium. Cunol, the brand I trust.
Well, they did it again. They put Joe Biden back in front of a camera and gave him a book. The former president announcing his new memoir coming out later this year. The book titled Promise Me America, set to be published roughly 2 weeks after the November midterm elections. In a video message, Joe has indicated his memoir will touch on key moments of his presidency, also hinting that he will work to reshape his horrible legacy in the new and upcoming book. Here's part of the video.
I've written a book about my time as president. It's called Promise Me America. It's about the challenges we faced as a nation, about the decisions I made and why I made them. Leading the country through COVID, restoring our democracy after the attack on January 6th, ending our nation's longest war in Afghanistan, strengthening NATO, and supporting Ukraine. It's about why I chose to run for re-election and why I chose to step aside.
Look, I can barely understand what he said just there. Not sure if anyone can. He also had an open border and rampant inflation, pretty much the two biggest problems we now face the repercussions for in this country. He was an awful president and most likely senile, or he was senile. This coming after his wife, Dr. Jill Biden, dropped her book last month. Jill recently revealing that she thought her husband had a stroke during that notorious debate against President Trump. Gotta ask, does anyone actually believe Joe wrote the book? Are we sure it wasn't the auto pen, maybe? Who knows at this point? Nobody knows exactly what is going on there. Jason Rantz, host of the Jason Rantz Show. Theo Wold, former Assistant Attorney General, both join us now. Jason, going to start with you. So the book was actually set to drop in September, and then I think Democrats were like, oh my God, we can't remind everybody how awful we were when we were running things with our puppet president, and I guess they moved the date now. Your thoughts about Joe Biden's new book?
Yeah, I mean, obviously he didn't write this book. He could barely get through that video. So I'm presuming if you can't get through a promotional video, you definitely can't write the book. And since we know he's almost certainly not going to be the one who reads it for the audio version, he may not even know what's in the book. And the sad part is, he might actually have something interesting to say if he were allowed to be honest and talk about how he was betrayed by Nancy Pelosi, how Kamala Harris stabbed him in the back, and how all of that went through. Like, I would legitimately read that. You just know you're not going to get any of that from this supposedly tell-all book. So I promise you, as an American, Joe Biden, I will not be reading your book.
Theo, do you believe Joe Biden actually wrote the book? But also, you got to remind people of what they bring to the table, and it's gone even further left. That is open borders, rampant inflation. It was awful.
Yeah, look, there's no way Joe Biden wrote this book. He didn't even, handle the day-to-day affairs of his own presidency. That was the auto pen. So, look, if you want to read what ChatGPT thinks about Joe Biden's presidency, buy the book. If you have better things to do with your life than like Democrats want to avoid being reminded of the absolute disaster that was the Biden presidency, runaway inflation, the open border invasion of our country, and the absolute destruction of America's moral credibility around the world. So, no, this is a ChatGPT special, and I tell everyone just avoid the purchase price. You can just ask Grok or one of the AI prompts to give you the rundown.
All right, let's switch gears. I don't want to talk about it anymore. It drives me insane. So there was a hearing, and this is making the rounds on the internet, on diversity, equity, inclusion, DEI in medical schools. So GOP Congresswoman Mary Miller, she's from Illinois, she asked a medical university leader on whether anyone outside of a woman can actually have a child, and this was the response.
Of course, the vast majority of pregnancies are in women, and I have absolutely no problem with using the word pregnant women. I use it myself.
Has a non-biological woman ever had a baby?
A transgender person can.
That's not a biological woman. Has a non-biological woman ever had a baby?
I would reiterate, we
it's
take
ridiculous.
care. So, Jason, you see what kids are up against at universities. This is why they come out with blue hair and they want to tear down the country. They're being taught that someone outside of a woman can have a child.
Well, they're being taught that before they go into medical school.
True.
That's the sad part. They're going into college and med school with the blue and green hair. It's because they're being taught this nonsense early on. What I love about that clip is he tries to get points by saying, I'll say pregnant women. Cool, but in that exact same clip, in the same breath, you're pretending that women aren't the only ones who get pregnant. It's pretty laughable. But, you know, a part of me feels for him because I imagine he fears the wrath of the mob should he actually be honest about medical decisions that are being made and medical acts that take place.
He really can't believe that. Yeah, some of this, these people can't believe this stuff. And Jason, to your point, they have to go along with it or else, you know, they'll face the wrath that is the woke left here. We got to leave it there. Jason, Rantz, Theo, Wold, I appreciate you both. Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Okay, coming up, you got to stick around for this. A woman from Canada, so she came to our country. She attacked a girl who was wearing MAGA gear. Also, that woman's husband made videos online wishing for the death of our president. Well, guess what? Now she is in jail, and hopefully for a very long time. I'm going to show you some of the videos from this coming up.
Some wireless companies say that they stand for something. What exactly do they stand for, and why won't they say it out loud? Let me tell you what Patriot Mobile stands for. They stand for the lives of the unborn. They stand for the Second Amendment and the right to protect yourself and your family. They stand for our veterans and first responders who sacrifice so much for our freedom. Make the switch to Patriot Mobile today and support a company that doesn't just say they stand for something, but one that stands for the things that matter the most.
Attention! Do you owe money to the IRS? If you owe $10,000 or more, you must hear this message because new Trump-era tax policy changes are providing relief to the American taxpayer. IRS policy changes in 2025 and 2026 have created new ways to resolve debt. Tax Relief Helpers knows exactly how to navigate them and could help you save thousands. Just call 800-357-9528 to protect your assets, home, and retirement.
I owed $87,000 in taxes. Tax Relief Helpers got the amount I owed down to just $3,500. I saved $83,500.
I got behind on my taxes and I owed $48,000. I called, and after they told me about the changes at the IRS, they got my bill fully removed.
We save Americans millions of dollars in tax debt every year, and we can help you. Call right now to take advantage of the latest Trump-era tax deductions to protect your assets, home, and retirement from the IRS. The call and consult are absolutely free. Call 800-357-9528. That's 800-357-9528. Attention! Do you owe money to the IRS? If you owe $10,000 or more, you must hear this message because new Trump-era tax policy changes are providing relief to the American taxpayer. IRS policy changes in 2025 and 2026 have created new ways to resolve debt. Tax Relief Helpers knows exactly how to navigate them and could help you save thousands. Just call 800-357-9528 to protect your assets, home, and retirement.
I owed $87,000 in taxes. Tax Relief Helpers got the amount I owed down to just $3,500. I saved $83,500.
I got behind on my taxes and I owed $48,000. I called, and after they told me about the changes at the IRS, they got my bill fully removed.
We save Americans millions of dollars in tax debt every year, and we can help you. Call right now to take advantage of the latest Trump-era tax deductions to protect your assets, home, and retirement from the IRS. The call and consult are absolutely free. Call 800-357-9528. That's 800-357-9528.
Okay, welcome back in. Time now for news from the left. Here's a lovely couple. Who wrote that? Here's an ugly couple with an extreme case of Trump derangement syndrome. That the woman there, a Canadian, who entered our country on a passport in 2024, allegedly slapping a teen who was wearing a President Trump branded clothing at the Jersey Shore over the July 4th weekend, celebrating our 250th, before getting arrested and detained by ICE. Now, according to court documents, Caitlin Tracy allegedly recorded herself confronting a group of girls down at Nice Point Pleasant Beach Boardwalk, all right? Taking issue with two people in the group wearing patriotic-colored sweatpants, striking one of them across the face and body for wearing sweatpants with the words Trump and ICE. Come to our country and you do that. Meanwhile, her husband, Matthew Gironi, he wished death on President Trump on his TikTok account. He also prayed that the entire family got cancer, including the little kids in the family. This person is demented. DHS, though, they're saying now that this woman is a criminal illegal alien who overstayed her visa and will remain in ICE custody pending her immigration proceedings. Good. I can't imagine going to another country, beating their citizens and disrespecting their leaders. I would expect to be thrown in jail. Hopefully they stay there for a long time. That's TDS in its perfect, purest form here. All right, let's bring in Kay Smythe, Newsmax contributor now. Kay, good to see you.
Good to see you, Bob. And they are an ugly couple. You were right. Definitely not lovely. Very,
yeah, they're
very
not
ugly.
Lovely. That was a Miss Right in the prompter there. They're seriously ugly and ugly inside as well. So what do you think should happen to this woman here? I say jail for an extremely long time.
Jail, or isn't that just like living in Canada, though? Isn't that like basically the same thing? Get her out of the country, ban her from the country, keep her out of the country forever, keep her equally as unattractive, weird, creepy husband, because... Bob, what kind of grown man makes videos like that? Bizarre, very creepy. Keep them out the country. And honestly, the only thing that kind of comes to mind after all of that is, where can I get some Trump sweatpants? I love me some sweatpants. I didn't realize there were sweatpants. I'd be wearing sweatpants with Trump on them all day if I knew they existed up until now. So I guess I'm grateful to these two ugly people for bringing that to my attention.
Well, now you know. Hopefully the administration's watching. We can get you some sweatpants here. I don't know if I agree on the deportation here. I kind of want her to be locked up in a cell and have to face consequences because she go back to Canada. All right, anyways, want to get to this here. Chuck Schumer, he appeared to break wind, okay, on the floor of the chamber, maybe even laughed a little bit himself here. All right, some light humor. Let's play it.
And we need a complete investigation that's independent. Now on Iran and the NDAA, when all the Trump administration...
You heard it, right? Senator Schumer, he called President Trump George Bush today as well. Did you hear that one?
Oh, no. I mean, this is what the Democrats do. They keep their people in power far too long to the point where they're getting names wrong and farting all the time during what is like pretty important stuff. I mean, this isn't like an Eric Swalwell press thing where, oh, it's just the chair. Definitely no, Eric, buddy, you farted. Own it. It would be the more manly thing to do. But yeah, that's what Democrats do. They keep their politicians in to the point where it's just sad. And everyone's like, I want to laugh at him, but he's getting old. If he's making these kind of mistakes, no.
Maybe time to hang it up. The real problem is they've lost total control of their party, and it's being overtaken by the DSA and communists here. That's what's really sad. Kay Smythe, gotta leave it there. Appreciate you.
Thanks, Bob. You too.
All right, coming up, how about this one? See that video there? This is a gay cruise. They tried to go to certain countries in certain parts of the world. They weren't welcomed. Guess who they blamed it on?
When you're in the news business, it never stops. News is always breaking, and it's my job to get you the news, no spin, no BS. If you don't believe us, just watch us.
Watch Finnerty, weeknights, only on Newsmax.
You can join the Tunnel to Towers mission to do good by donating your car to today's veterans. Your car donation will help Gold Star families, as well as injured veterans, our first responders, and our homeless veterans. Donating your car is quick and simple. Any car is accepted, and we will pick up the car for free. Simply call 844 bravest.
By donating your car, you can make a real difference. You can do good.
My dad has never been in better shape. He had a stroke and passed away. He had a life insurance policy. Ethos.com. In 10 minutes, you can be covered with life insurance.
Check your price today at ethos.com.
Thanks to Jointivia, I'm back in the swing of things. Wait, $70 for a refill?
You gotta try Single Care. Just look up your prescription, show the coupon at the pharmacy, and save.
See why more people are saving with Single Care.
Where's the admission desk at your hospital? You may need it sooner than you think. It's the middle of the night and you, your spouse, or your child is sick, high fever, can't keep anything down, and getting worse. Now you're waiting in the ER, and everyone gets seen before you. And when I finally see you and order prescriptions, you still have to wait for your pharmacy to open and hope they have what I prescribed. This is the medical emergency kit. It's stocked with essential medications, including amoxicillin, generic Z-Pak, and ivermectin. Now you have the right medications when you need them. And it's why I and so many of my colleagues have medical emergency kits. It's like having an urgent care and pharmacy in your home. Just fill out a brief online medical intake and your kit, prescribed by a licensed provider, is shipped to your door. Here's how to order.
Order your kit now and save $45. Visit urgentcarekit.com/news. That's urgentcarekit.com/news.
Kevin Sorbo here, and I have an important message to share. The government needs more money, your money. If you owe the IRS back taxes, they can garnish your wages and levy your bank accounts. They can even seize your retirement or take your home. Don't let the IRS target you. Call the professionals at Tax Network USA. Their tax lawyers and enrolled agents are experts in powerful programs that may even help you eliminate your tax debt.
Call for a free consultation or visit tnusa.com.
Guys, wake up. Testosterone boosters are useless if they're not also fighting cortisol, the hormone that makes you soft after 40. Ageless Male Max does it all with patented KSM 66 to boost testosterone and balance cortisol. Get Ageless Male Max at these fine retailers.
2 p.m. still works great. We'll put our best guy on the job.
You said you were the best guy.
Also the sales guy.
You should check out Capitus. You can get a fast business loan and hire some help.
I got that.
Stop waiting, start growing. Get the funding you need at Capitus.com.
All right, welcome back in. Here's quite the story. An LGBTQ cruise called the Virgin Voyages Scarlet Lady was sailing through the Mediterranean, denied entry into Turkey and Egypt. Those countries not so friendly. According to the Turkish government, they banned the cruise from docking due to it being known for behaviors that do not align with the structure of our society and their moral values. So some of the passengers, they were furious they couldn't get in, and some even went on to blame President Trump. Robbie Finnerty.
Yep, we got a soundbite there, or are we just coming to me?
No, we're coming to you.
All right. Sounds like a great cruise. Holy cow, I'm on this side. What is going on?
What happened?
That's never happened before. Now it's just me. So we're off to a great start.
I got much else to say about that one.
There he is.
We'll
now
leave
we're
it
back.
there.
Now we're back, Bob. See that? I don't know why I'm over here. Yeah, that sounds like a strange cruise to be a part of, by the way. What is it called? The Scarlet Oak or the Scarlet Letter or the something?
Scarlet Virgin Lady or something
just
like
weird.
that.
Guys, I said it last night. Just go to like Cancun like normal people, all right? You don't need to go to Muslim countries to prove a point. Finnerty starts right now. Bob will do it tomorrow.
All right, Robbie. See ya.
Information. Truth. Is freedom. Is Newsmax. It's real news for real people.